Death Star. What a prescient turn of phrase.
I can't protect you, Leo.
You were supposed to be ready by now.
You sound like Tarkin.
It's a miracle we've kept it quiet this long.
We're moments away. Days! A few more tests, we're there.
Save the sermon for Palpatine.
The clip I just played is a part of what's gotta be one of my favorite scenes of Andor's second season. Both Andor and, to a lesser extent, Rogue One have given us so many compelling Imperial characters, and in the 11th hour, we see now a meeting between arguably two of the most compelling. Major Leo Partagaz of the ISB and Director Orson Krennic of Advanced Weapons Research. So today I want to break down this scene, sort of what's simmering below the surface, why I enjoy it so much, and how it serves really as a microcosm for what's actually happening at this point in the timeline. So right off the bat, one thing I think everyone really enjoys about this scene is the informality between the two men. This is something you never see with Krennic. He is always treating people based on their relative power and position to him. Those beneath him in the Imperial hierarchy, he shows contempt, or at the very least impatience, while he openly jostles against or even resists those either above him or competing for the same position, as is the case with Tarkin. With Partagaz, there's none of that. In fact, he uses his first name, Leo, to underscore the interpersonal relationship which obviously exists between the two men. I don't know exactly where they would have met before. It could simply be that over the last 19 years, as Partagaz has been moving up through the ISB, Krennic's been moving up through Imperial weapons research, and they've been rubbing shoulders as colleagues. I have a bit of a different headcanon. Obviously, there's no concrete information supporting this, but based on their relative ages, I do wonder whether Partagaz may have even taught Krennic at some time, perhaps in a pre-Imperial academy, whether under the Republic or something else. And you know what? I've got to backtrack a little bit, because I said Krennic doesn't show this sort of, I'll even call it interest in anyone else, and that's not really correct. There is one other person, Galen Erso. Galen is someone who has what Krennic needs. I think Krennic recognizes his intelligence. However, they're obviously not directly competing for the same positions, and we also know that the two had a history together. Based on Rogue One tie-in sources, we know that Krennic and Erso came up together through the Republic's Future program. He then served various roles in the Republic, and I do wonder whether alongside Erso, he may have, in his past, run into Partagaz. Though whether or not that was the case, I don't think it matters, and is not even really the most interesting aspect of this scene. I just really appreciate that for a brief second, we see a different side of the character. Partagaz has shown interest in, I'm going to call them his students. They're obviously not. They're his ISB colleagues or subordinates. But for me, he's always reminded me of various professors I had throughout undergrad and law school, challenging, and again, I know they're not, his pupils often through the Socratic method. I honestly felt like that to the point where it was somewhat weird seeing him outside of the ISB meeting room, like seeing a teacher outside of school. But I guess this sort of vibe of the character to me really just adds something to the scene where, again, it feels like Krennic may even be a successful pupil now coming back to work with his old teacher, and they need to have a frank conversation. However, this is a true liminal moment in the Star Wars universe, and I'm going to talk about why in just a second. Before we do, however, today's video is sponsored by my good friends over at Vite Ramen. First of all, thank you, Vite Ramen, for allowing me to put the placement midway through the video so I give viewers something to chew on beforehand. But speaking of chew on, Vite Ramen. You can see thousands of reviews on Vite Ramen across the channel. I don't delete them, good or bad experiences. Most people love Vite Ramen because it's the simplicity of takeout with excellent flavor in a package that's actually healthy for you. For example, take the Shoyu Tonkatsu Pro Plus pack, say that 3 times fast, ramen, and you get 42 grams of protein for only 460 calories. And again, it tastes delicious. Some of the ramens I like to actually cut down on the water and mix peanut butter in. But anyway, Vite Ramen is not only delicious and nutritious, but a great company which pays their employees a living wage which I think it should matter. And they also have treated me super well and at times have literally kept the channel afloat. So click the link down in the description, and the first 100 people who use code ECK20 will get 20% off. Then the next 250 who use code ECK15 will get 15% off. And as always, I'll bully Tim. We'll get extra uses out of those codes, so try both. Anyway, on with the video. All right, so I talked about the dark undercurrent to the Partagaz Krennic scene and the fact that it was existing in a sort of liminal space within the Star Wars universe. I don't mean liminal space as in what it's been reduced to, i.e. spooky back rooms, but the fact that as this episode is happening and as this meeting is happening specifically, the Empire is in a stage of drastic transition. And honestly, the transition isn't really different in feeling or in fact to what we see in episode 3. Institutions are beginning to crumble, and in Andor, it's the ISB. And listen, it's not like the ISB is good or anything like that. Certainly the opposite, as we've seen throughout the series. But the Imperial Security Bureau, the people within it, even the room itself is something that we, as viewers, have gotten used to and have associated with the Empire. And it's about to be torn down. Partagaz himself may not recognize the true degree to which things are falling apart. Krennic certainly does. And we, as the viewer, may not be able to name the feeling specifically, but it's happening. The creation and launching of the Death Star represents another step in Imperial tyranny and a further move from the Republic. We know Palpatine is about to dismantle the Senate. We talked generally about this on the channel recently, but the creation of the Death Star further moves power to the hands of Palpatine and his few closest advisors personally. It also moves power specifically to the Navy, and Palpatine believed that with the Death Star, the Empire would clearly be the ultimate power in the universe, capable of subjugating planets at will. That's the message we get from A New Hope. They don't believe anyone can stand up to them now with the Death Star revealed. So the galaxy has taken a much darker turn where Palpatine can now fully commit whatever crimes he chooses to, and realistically no one can stand up to him. And that's just how things are going. Am I saying the ISB will completely cease to exist after the creation of the Death Star? I mean, it's possible. I don't know. Certainly they didn't, but again, the Death Star was also blown up, so Palpatine lost his ace in the sleeve almost immediately. But I also think this is part of Krennic's attitude. The conversation starts off with Partagaz acknowledging the Death Star, exasperated because the thing that they've worked so hard to help conceal is not there when it should be. And I do think part of Krennic's reaction is the recognition that Partagaz is someone who has been working hard, who's been doing the Empire's willing, and he's about to be tossed aside when no longer needed, which is something the Empire always does, but he likes Partagaz. And the Empire was, of course, on their way to do who knows what to Partagaz at the end of episode 12, but even without that, I think his fate was going to be dramatically altered by the launch of the Death Star either way. And it's kind of ironic because really the same thing happens to Krennic when Tarkin realizes that he can clean everything up, take control of the super weapon, and essentially remove countless layers of Imperial skin. He does so by firing the Death Star directly, eliminating not just the research station, but Krennic himself. So in general, I think that's part of why the scene is so good. And as viewers, it may not even be something we can put words to, but this conversation is really one of the last of an era which is dying, an era which has been documented by this show for the past 2 seasons. We don't like the ISB, we're not meant to, but we've become familiar with it, and it's all about to be wiped out. Everything over these last 3 episodes, really after Gorman, just takes a different darkness to it, I think, because the last vestiges of the Republic are crumbling away, and even the more, I don't want to say civilized, but more organized aspects of the Empire are following with it. That's my thought anyways. Let me know yours down below, and let me know if you enjoyed this scene. I certainly did, and if you did, consider subscribing and turning notifications on. If you really want to support the channel, you can also check out Vite Ramen. It's good in its own right, even if you hate me. Link in the description. Use code ECK20 or ECK15. But I'll see you guys next time. Bye-bye.